Have you ever looked at your apple tree, exhausted after hours of aggressive pruning, and wondered why your harvest is still incredibly small? What if I told you that your pruning saw is actually the biggest enemy of your fruit yield? Welcome back to the channel, fellow gardeners. Today we are going to completely flip everything you thought you knew about taking care of your orchard. We are talking about the magical, lazy method of bending your apple tree branches without causing them any harm whatsoever. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to trick your trees into producing up to 3 times as many apples, all while putting in a fraction of the physical effort. But here is the crazy part that most traditional farmers refuse to accept. Cutting off a healthy branch is like cutting up a winning lottery ticket. Are you brave enough to stop hacking away at your trees and try something that actually works? Let me know in the comments right now if you are Team Prune or Team Let It Grow. Let us get into the secret. Before we dive into the exact steps, we need to quickly understand the mind of an apple tree. Imagine the energy inside your tree as a rushing river of water. In the plant world, there is a concept called apical dominance. This simply means that the tree desperately wants to send all of its sap, hormones, and energy straight up into the sky. Branches that point straight up are focused on one thing only, and that is growing taller and producing more green leaves to beat the competition. They do not care about giving you fruit. However, when a branch is horizontal, parallel to the ground, the flow of that energy slows down drastically. The hormones shift. The tree realizes it cannot reach the sky anymore, so it switches from survival mode into reproduction mode. It starts creating fruit buds. For hundreds of years, commercial orchards have used this biological loophole to maximize their crops. Today, we are bringing that professional, lazy science right to your backyard. Let us dive right into the biggest myth about caring for your apple trees. Most gardeners believe that grabbing a saw and heavily pruning the tree every single spring is the only way to get a good harvest. They spend hours sweating on a ladder, cutting away all those beautiful branches. But what if I told you that every time you cut a healthy branch, you are actually throwing away a bucket of potential apples? It is true. When you prune heavily, the tree goes into a state of panic. It thinks it is being attacked. So, instead of using its energy to produce sweet, juicy fruit, it uses all that precious energy to grow new, useless leaves and shoots to replace what it lost. This is a nightmare for the lazy gardener. We want maximum results with minimum effort. By bending the branches instead of cutting them, we are working with the tree, not against it. We are speaking the language of nature. We tell the tree that it is safe, it is mature, and it is time to start having babies, which, in the tree world, means producing an abundance of delicious apples. So, put down those heavy, dangerous tools. We are going to use brain power instead of muscle power to force your orchard to give you the harvest of your dreams, without causing any harm to your precious plants. Now let us talk about timing, because doing this at the wrong moment can turn a great idea into a gardening disaster. You absolutely cannot just walk out into your yard in the middle of a freezing winter and start pulling on branches. The wood will be incredibly brittle, and it will snap like a dry twig. The absolute best time to start bending your apple tree branches is in the late spring or early summer. Think about the months when the sap is flowing fully and the tree is actively pushing out new green growth. During this time, the branches are incredibly flexible and bendy. They are full of moisture and life. Imagine the difference between trying to bend a piece of uncooked pasta versus a piece of cooked pasta. You want to work with the tree when it is pliable. If you miss the early summer window, you can still do it in late summer, but the results will take a bit longer to set in. Never attempt this in the dead of winter or early spring before the sap starts moving. Patience is the ultimate tool for a smart gardener. and waiting for the warm weather will guarantee that your branches bend beautifully without any cracking, splitting, or permanent damage to the delicate structure. The next step is evaluating your tree to choose the perfect candidates for bending. You do not want to bend every single branch you see. That would just create a messy, tangled web of wood. You are looking for those ambitious, vigorous branches that are shooting almost straight up into the sky. We call these vertical competitors. They are trying to become the new main trunk. If you leave them alone, they will just produce a giant canopy of leaves that shades out the rest of your tree. You want to select branches that are relatively young, ideally 1 or 2 years old. These young shoots are highly cooperative and will gladly adopt a new shape. If a branch is already as thick as your arm and heavily covered in rough bark, it is probably too late to bend it drastically without specialized tools. Look for branches that are about the thickness of a thick marker or a broom handle. These are your prime targets. By selecting the right branches, you are stepping into the role of an orchestra conductor, gently guiding the energy of the tree exactly where you want it to go, creating a beautiful, open structure that invites sunlight and air circulation. So what is the magic angle you are trying to achieve? This is where the science of smart gardening really comes into play. You do not want the branch pointing straight down toward the dirt, and you certainly do not want it pointing straight up. The golden rule, the absolute sweet spot for massive fruit production, is an angle of roughly 60 to 90 degrees from the main trunk. Think of the letter L. When a branch is pulled down to be nearly horizontal, or just slightly pointing upward from horizontal, the magic happens. The flow of growth hormones, specifically auxins, is interrupted. Instead of rushing to the tip of the branch to create more leaves, these hormones pool along the length of the branch. This hormonal traffic jam triggers the tree to create short, fat little spurs. And guess what? Those little spurs are exactly where the apple blossoms will form next spring. If you bend the branch too far down so it points at the ground, the tree will think that branch is dying and will stop sending nutrients to it altogether. So, aim for that beautiful horizontal plane, like an open umbrella, to maximize your harvest without confusing the plant. Let us talk about the tools of the trade. And no, you do not need anything expensive or complicated from the garden center. In fact, using the wrong materials is the #1 way beginners completely ruin their trees. You must never, ever use bare wire, thin fishing line, or tough nylon strings directly against the bark of your apple tree. As the tree grows and expands throughout the summer, those thin, hard materials will cut deep into the bark. This process is called girdling, and it will strangle the branch, cutting off the flow of nutrients and eventually killing it. Instead, you need to think soft and wide. The smart gardener uses materials that distribute the pressure. Soft cotton ropes, wide strips of old bed sheets, or special rubber gardening ties are your best friends. You are trying to guide the tree gently, not hold it hostage. Imagine you are putting a soft collar on a puppy. You want it to be secure, but you absolutely do not want it to choke or cut into the skin. Choosing the right tying material is a tiny detail that separates a struggling amateur from a master orchardist. Even with soft ropes, you need an extra layer of protection. This is a brilliant little hack that will save you so much heartbreak. Before you tie your rope or fabric strip around the branch, create a buffer zone. I love using things I already have lying around the homestead. You can cut short pieces of an old, useless garden hose. Thread your rope through the piece of hose and let the soft rubber of the hose rest against the apple tree bark. You can also use thick pieces of cardboard, folded rags, or even sections of foam pipe insulation. This buffer does 2 things. First, it completely eliminates the risk of the rope cutting into the growing bark. Second, it stops the rope from rubbing and causing friction wounds when the wind blows and the tree sways. An open wound on a tree branch is an open door for nasty fungal diseases and boring insects to move right in and destroy your hard work. Taking 3 extra seconds to slip a piece of old hose onto your tying rope is the ultimate preventative medicine for your orchard. Now we reach the physical act of bending. This is where you must channel your inner Zen master. The golden rule here is slow and steady. You never want to grab a branch and yank it down to its final position in one sudden aggressive motion. If you do that, you will hear a sickening crack, and you will have lost that branch forever. You have to treat the tree branch like you would treat your own muscles before a workout. You need to stretch it. Stand next to the branch and gently pull it downward a few inches with your hands. Hold it there for a moment. Feel the tension in the wood. Then, let it back up. Pull it down a little further the next time. You are giving the wood fibers time to stretch and micro-tear safely without snapping the main structure. It is a gentle massage for the tree. Once you have gently flexed the branch a few times and feel it becoming more compliant, then you can tie it into its new horizontal position. This patient approach guarantees that your tree experiences zero trauma, which means all its energy can stay focused on producing those giant, sweet apples for your family. Once the branch is bent, where do you attach the other end of the rope? One of the most popular and easiest methods is to anchor it directly to the ground. This is fantastic for those lower branches that are easily within reach. You can use simple wooden stakes, metal tent pegs, or even heavy stones. Just drive the stake deep into the soil directly beneath the branch and tie your line. However, a word of caution for the practical homesteader. Ground anchors create an invisible web of trip hazards all around your tree. If you are constantly mowing the grass, pulling weeds, or if you have kids and dogs running through the garden, those strings can become a huge annoyance. If you use the ground anchor method, make sure you use brightly colored rope, or tie a bright ribbon to the line so you do not accidentally catch it with your foot or the lawnmower. It is a highly effective way to pull branches down, but it requires a bit of spatial awareness to keep your garden safe and easy to navigate. If you hate the idea of strings running down to the dirt, there is a fantastic alternative that keeps everything self-contained. You can tie the branch directly to the main trunk of the tree itself, or even to a thicker, lower branch that is already established. This is an incredibly smart way to manage your orchard, because you can mow and walk under the tree without dodging ropes. You tie a loose, protective loop around the branch you want to bend, and then you run the line down at an angle and secure it around the base of the trunk. Remember to use a protective buffer on the trunk as well. The tree becomes its own anchor. This method is particularly brilliant for medium-sized trees where the branches are high enough to walk under. It keeps your garden looking neat and tidy while silently doing the heavy lifting of orchard management. It is the perfect example of working smart, utilizing the existing structure of the plant to force it into a more productive, fruit-bearing shape. For those of you who want the absolute laziest, easiest method possible, let me introduce you to the weight technique. No ropes, no stakes, no tying to the trunk. You simply hang weights directly from the branches you want to lower. You can use old plastic water bottles or milk jugs, fill them with water or sand, tie a soft loop around the handle, and hang them near the middle of the branch. Gravity does 100% of the work for you. The beauty of the water bottle method is that it is completely adjustable. If the branch is not bending enough, you just unscrew the cap and pour in a little more water. If it is bending too far, pour some water out. It is fully customizable. Plus, as the weeks go by and the branch naturally relaxes into its new position, you can slowly reduce the weight. This method is a favorite among self-sufficiency advocates because it reuses household waste to grow more food. Just make sure you do not hang the weight right at the very tip of the branch, or it might swing wildly in the wind and snap the fragile growing end. Speaking of the wind, if you use the hanging weight method, you must remain vigilant about the weather. A gentle breeze is fine, but a strong summer storm can turn those hanging water bottles into dangerous pendulums. If a heavy bottle starts swinging violently in high winds, the twisting motion can easily rip the branch right out of the socket where it meets the trunk. That is a catastrophic injury for the tree. Therefore, the smart gardener checks the weather forecast. If you know a severe thunderstorm or heavy winds are coming, take 10 minutes to walk through your orchard and unhook the weights. You can simply set them on the ground until the storm passes. This is a minor inconvenience that saves your tree from major damage. Alternatively, if your area is constantly windy, the weight method might not be the best choice for you, and you should stick to secure ties anchored to the trunk or the ground. Adapting your strategy to your specific local climate is the hallmark of a true master gardener. What about very young apple trees, the ones you just planted this year or last year? They do not need ropes or heavy water bottles. Their branches are as soft as green beans. For these tiny saplings, you can use the brilliant clothespin trick. This is perhaps the smartest, easiest hack in the entire world of gardening. You simply take an ordinary wooden clothespin and clip it directly to the main vertical trunk, just above the tiny new branch that is starting to grow. You position the clothespin so that it gently pushes down on the top of the baby branch, forcing it to grow outward horizontally instead of upward. You leave it there for a few weeks, and the branch permanently adopts that perfect 90-degree angle. It takes 2 seconds per branch, costs absolutely nothing, and sets your tree up for a lifetime of heavy fruit production from the very beginning. By training the tree while it is just a baby, you eliminate the need for heavy bending or drastic pruning in the future. It is proactive, lazy gardening at its absolute finest. Let us address a common fear. What happens if, despite all your gentle massaging and careful preparation, you hear a slight crack while pulling a branch down? Do not panic, and do not immediately grab the saw to cut it off. Apple tree wood is remarkably resilient and can heal from minor fractures if you act quickly. If you see a small split in the bark or a minor crack in the wood fibers, but the branch is still firmly attached, you can perform simple tree first aid. Immediately release some of the tension on the rope so the crack closes back up. Then, wrap the injured area tightly with electrical tape or specialized grafting tape. This acts like a cast on a broken arm. It seals the wound, prevents moisture from escaping, and stops nasty bacteria from entering. Leave the tape on for a few months. In most cases, the tree will produce special healing cells called callus tissue, which will glue the branch back together stronger than before. A minor crack is not the end of the world. It is just an opportunity to practice your orchard medic skills. Once you have successfully bent your branches, you will notice something interesting happen over the next few weeks. The tree, still desperately wanting to grow straight up, will start producing new, incredibly fast-growing vertical shoots along the top side of the branch you just bent. We call these water sprouts. They look like little green spears shooting straight for the sun. Do not let these intimidate you. This is a completely natural reaction. However, as a smart gardener, you must deal with them, or they will steal all the energy away from the fruit buds you are trying to create. The lazy way to handle water sprouts is not to cut them, but to simply rub them off with your thumb while they are still tiny and soft. If you catch them when they are less than an inch long, they snap right off with zero effort and leave no wound. If you wait until they are thick and woody, you will have to bring out the pruners again. A quick 5-minute stroll through the garden once a week to rub off these tiny sprouts will keep your tree perfectly balanced and completely focused on growing apples. A huge question every beginner asks is, How long do I have to leave the ropes, weights, or clothespins in place? The answer requires a little bit of patience. You cannot just bend a branch on Monday and take the rope off on Friday. The wood needs time to create new cells and permanently harden into its new horizontal position. Generally speaking, you need to leave your ties in place for the entire growing season. If you tie them down in early summer, leave them there through the heat of midsummer and right into the early autumn. It takes roughly 3 to 4 months for the branch to set. If you take the tension off too early, the branch has a memory, and it will slowly creep right back up to its original vertical position, and all your hard work will be completely wasted. Let the tree do the slow, invisible work of rearranging its internal structure. You can go inside, drink some iced tea, and let time and nature do the heavy lifting for you. When the leaves start to turn colors and fall off in the autumn, that is your signal. That is the perfect time to go out and remove all the ropes, strings, and weights from your apple trees. By late autumn, the tree has stopped actively growing and is preparing to go to sleep for the winter. The new wood cells have hardened and the branch is locked into its new, highly productive horizontal shape. It is incredibly important that you do not leave ties on over the winter and into the next spring. If you forget them, the tree will start expanding again when the warm weather returns, and those forgotten ropes will quickly slice into the expanding bark. Make it a fun autumn ritual. Grab a warm cup of coffee, walk through your peaceful, sleeping garden, and untie all your hard work. You will be amazed to see those thick branches hovering perfectly parallel to the ground with zero support, ready to explode with blossoms when the spring sun returns. Let us take a moment to look at the long-term magic of what you have just achieved. By choosing to bend instead of cut, you have completely changed the destiny of your tree. A tree that is heavily pruned every year stays stuck in a juvenile, vegetative state. It constantly fights you, trying to grow the leaves you just cut off. But your tree, the one you gently trained with ropes and patience, has matured. You have told its hormones that it is time to settle down and become a fruit factory. The horizontal branches you created this year will develop hundreds of short, wrinkly fruit spurs next season. And the best part? Those spurs will produce apples not just next year, but for 5, 10, or even 15 years to come. You have front-loaded a tiny bit of effort this summer to guarantee a decade of massive, effortless harvests. This is the very definition of smart gardening. You are using knowledge of plant biology to eliminate years of future physical labor. But what if your apple tree is already old, neglected, and looks like a wild, tangled mess? Can you still use this bending trick? Absolutely, but it requires a slightly different strategy. You cannot bend a 10-year-old branch that is as thick as your thigh. For older trees, you first have to do some selective pruning to remove the dead wood and open up the center of the tree to let light in. Once sunlight can penetrate the canopy, the old tree will respond by pushing out new, vigorous green shoots from the older branches. Those new, young shoots are your golden opportunity. You wait for those new shoots to get about a foot long, and then you use the bending techniques we discussed to train them horizontally. Over a couple of years, you can completely replace the old, unproductive wood with new, horizontally trained fruiting branches. It is like giving an old, tired tree a complete fountain of youth makeover. It takes a few seasons, but the revival of an old tree is one of the most rewarding experiences for any homesteader. Another massive, often overlooked benefit of bending branches horizontally is how it dramatically improves the health of your apples. When branches shoot straight up into a dense, vertical canopy, the leaves are packed tightly together. This blocks sunlight and prevents the wind from blowing through. A dark, damp canopy is the absolute perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases like apple scab and powdery mildew, which will ruin your entire crop. By pulling the branches down and spreading them out like the ribs of an umbrella, you are opening up the heart of the tree. Every single leaf and developing apple gets bathed in glorious sunshine, which sweetens the fruit. More importantly, the wind can freely blow through the branches, drying off the morning dew quickly. Fungi simply cannot survive in a sunny, airy environment. So by being lazy and bending branches instead of spraying expensive toxic chemicals, you are naturally protecting your harvest from disease. Ultimately, the shift from aggressive pruning to gentle branch bending is a shift in your entire gardening philosophy. It moves you away from trying to conquer and control nature through force and moves you toward observing and cooperating with it. The old way is exhausting. It requires ladders, sharp saws, and yearly anxiety over making the wrong cuts. The new way, the smart way, requires a spool of soft string, a few old water bottles, and an understanding of how sap flows. When you look out at your orchard and see beautifully sculpted trees, heavy with fruit right at eye level, you will feel a profound sense of accomplishment. You did not fight the tree, you guided it. You have created an abundant, sustainable food source for your family with minimal stress for both you and the plant. That is the true joy of self-sufficiency. You have unlocked the hidden potential of your garden simply by changing the angle of a few branches. And there you have it, the ultimate secret to unlocking massive harvests without ever picking up a saw. By simply understanding that vertical branches make leaves and horizontal branches make apples, you have just saved yourself years of back-breaking work. You now know how to gently stretch the wood, use the right protective buffers, and let time and gravity do the heavy lifting. This simple shift from cutting to bending will literally triple the amount of fruit your trees produce, turning your backyard into an absolute apple factory. It is lazy, it is brilliant, and the results are undeniably delicious. Thank you so much for hanging out in the garden with me today. If this biological trick blew your mind, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a big thumbs up so we can spread the word to other exhausted gardeners. I would love to hear from you. What is the most stubborn, frustrating fruit tree you are currently battling in your yard? Drop your stories in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video for more smart, self-sufficient gardening hacks.